Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it, then let's evaluate together. The air in Atlanta was thick with July heat, the kind that clung to your skin like a bad memory. Buckhead's Hamilton estate glowed under a canopy of string lights, its white columns and manicured hedges screaming old money. Inside, the gala was in full swing. Champagne flutes, clinked violin notes, floated like silk, and the scent of bourbon and perfume hung heavy. The hardwood floors gleamed under the chandeliers, reflecting the smug faces of Atlanta's elite. It was the kind of night where power dressed up as charity, and everyone played along. Zora Brooks, 38, moved through the crowd like a ghost in her beige server's uniform. The fabric itched against her dark skin, and the cap they'd forced her to wear pressed her natural curls flat. She balanced a tray of shrimp cocktails, dodging the careless elbows of men in linen suits and women in pastel dresses. Nobody looked at her, not really. To them, she was just the help, a shadow in a house she'd called home since she was 5. Adopted by the Hamiltons, sure, but never theirs. Never wanted. She caught a glimpse of herself in a gilded mirror near the foyer. Her full lips were set in a tight line, her brown eyes sharp despite the exhaustion. Sweat beaded on her neck, and she adjusted her grip on the tray, ignoring the ache in her arms. 20 years in this house, and she still felt like an intruder. The Hamiltons didn't beat her or lock her in a closet. Their cruelty was quieter, cold smiles, patronizing praise, and a silence that screamed, "You don't belong." "Ladies and gentlemen," William Hamilton's voice boomed from the stage, cutting through the chatter. Zora froze, her heart kicking against her ribs. William the patriarch stood tall in a cream suit. His silver hair slicked back, his smile as polished as the floor. Beside him, Evelyn Hamilton glittered in a blue dress, diamonds winking at her throat. Their daughter Sophia leaned against a table nearby, whispering to Chloe Randall, a blonde influencer in a sequined gown. Both smirked in Zora's direction. Tonight, William continued, "We celebrate the Hamilton legacy of giving, and we've got a special symbol of our generosity to share." His eyes locked on Zora, and her stomach dropped. The crowd turned their gazes, pinning her like a bug on a board. She set the tray down, hands trembling, and took a step back. "Zora, come on up." William's tone was jovial, but his eyes were ice. 2 event staffers, young guys in black vests, grabbed her arms, their grips firm but not rough. "It's just a little performance," one muttered, like that made it okay. Zora's legs moved on autopilot as they led her to the stage, her pulse roaring in her ears. The crowd parted their laughter low and cruel, like they'd been waiting for this. They stopped at a decorative wooden post near the garden fountain, part of the gala's historic elegance theme. Before Zora could process it, the staffers tied her wrists with a silk rope, the fabric biting into her skin. She stood straight, chin up, refusing to let them see her break. But then William stepped forward, a glass of red wine in hand. "This," he said, raising the glass, "is for the debt we've paid society." He tipped the glass, and wine splashed over Zora's head, cold and sticky, soaking her uniform and dripping down her face. The crowd gasped, then laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. Zora's vision blurred as wine stung her eyes, but she bit her lip so hard she tasted blood, the metallic tang mixing with the Merlot. "Go to hell," she whispered, barely audible, her voice shaking with rage. "You're not my father, you bastard!" William leaned in, his breath sour with whiskey. "Without us, you'd still be trash on the street, girl. Be grateful." He turned back to the crowd, arms wide. "A reminder of how far we've come, folks. Let's raise a glass to progress." Sophia giggled, sipping her champagne, while Chloe snapped a photo, her smile venomous. Right where she belongs. Chloe purred loud enough for Zora to hear. Keisha Monroe. Zora's best friend pushed through the crowd, her braids swinging. "Y'all are some sick assholes," she shouted. But a security guard grabbed her, dragging her toward the exit. "Zora." "Hold on," Keisha yelled, her voice fading. Zora's chest heaved, her wrists burning against the rope. The wine dripped down her neck, pooling at her collarbone, and her curls clung to her cheeks. She locked her eyes on the horizon where the Atlanta skyline flickered against the night. She'd survived this house for 20 years. She could survive this. Then William dropped the real bomb. "Let's be clear," he said, his voice low and smug. "We took Zora in to clean up a mess. 20 years ago, I was sued for, let's call it a misstep in a case. A little racial bias, they said." He chuckled like it was a joke. "Adopting her was our redemption. We gave her a name, a roof, but let's not kid ourselves, she's still trash." The crowd went silent, some shifting uncomfortably, others nodding like it made sense. Zora's heart stopped. She'd always known they didn't love her, but they'd used her as a prop, a shield for William's bigotry. Her knees buckled, but the rope held her up, cutting deeper. "Fuck you," she hissed louder this time, her voice raw. "You're a coward." William's smile faltered, but before he could respond, a low rumble cut through the air. Tires screeched on the gravel drive, and a black Bentley roared to a stop, its headlights slicing through the crowd. The driver's door slammed, and Morgan Hart stepped out, all 6'2" of him, his black suit torn at the shoulder, a fresh bruise blooming on his cheek like he'd just come from a fight. His dark hair was mussed, and his green eyes burned with something feral. The crowd parted, whispers rippling like wildfire. Morgan strode forward, his boots crunching on the gravel, the scent of smoke and sandalwood cologne trailing him. He didn't look at William Evelyn or Chloe. His eyes found Zora, and for a second the world shrank to just them. He reached her in 3 strides, pulling a folding knife from his pocket. The blade flashed as he sliced through the rope, his hand steady, despite the blood trickling from a cut on his palm. He caught her as she stumbled forward, his touch warm against her wine-soaked skin. "I'm here, baby," he whispered, his voice rough. He kissed her bound wrists, his lips brushing the raw skin, and Zora's breath hitched her heart pounding for a different reason now. Morgan straightened, turning to face the crowd, his arm around her waist. "Listen up, you pieces of shit," he roared, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "This woman is my wife, and you just made the biggest fucking mistake of your lives." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a stack of papers, and threw them at William's feet. "That's the deed to this house. I bought it. Every brick, every chandelier, every goddamn lie you've built. And you know why it was up for grabs. Because Zora saved your sorry asses from foreclosure. She negotiated with the bank, kept your lights on while you treated her like garbage." William's face went gray, his hands shaking as he picked up the papers. Evelyn gasped, clutching her pearls. You tricked us," she stammered, her voice shrill. "Tricked you," Zora snapped, stepping forward, wine still dripping from her chin. "I saved you, you ungrateful bitch. And this is what I get." Her voice cracked, but she held her ground, her eyes blazing. Morgan's phone buzzed in his pocket, and he glanced at it for a split second, his jaw tightening. Zora caught the movement, a flicker of unease cutting through her anger, but there was no time to dwell. Morgan turned back to the crowd, his voice low and dangerous. "You thought you could break her? You don't know who you're fucking with." He moved before anyone could react, his boot slamming into the wooden post. It splintered with a crack, and he kicked it again, sending it tumbling into a decorative fire pit nearby. Flames roared to life, licking the wood, casting wild shadows across the lawn. The crowd screamed, some stumbling back, others pulling out phones to record. Chloe shrieked, "You're insane!" her sequins glittering as she backed away. "Fuck all y'all." Morgan shouted, his voice raw. "This party's bullshit and so are you. Get the hell out of my wife's house. He grabbed Zora's hand, his grip tight, but his fingers trembled, and that glance at his phone lingered in her mind like a splinter. William lunged forward, his face purple. You can't do this. This is my legacy. Your legacy's burning, asshole. Morgan shot back, nodding at the flames. 15 minutes. Pack your shit and go. Zora's chest heaved, her body buzzing with adrenaline. She looked at William. Evelyn, Sophia, Chloe. All of them, their faces twisted with shock and fear. Thank you, she said, her voice steady now, cutting through the chaos. Thank you for teaching me how to survive you. She turned to Morgan, her hand tightening in his, and they walked through the crowd. The fire's heat at their backs, the sound of sirens wailing in the distance. As they reached the Bentley, Zora paused, wiping blood and wine from her lip. The Atlanta skyline glittered beyond the estate, its lights blurring in her vision. Morgan opened the car door for her, his hand lingering on her arm, but his eyes darted to his phone again, a shadow crossing his face. You okay? He asked, his voice softer now, almost hesitant. I will be, Zora said, her voice low. She slid into the car, the leather cool against her skin, and glanced at Morgan as he climbed in. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and that shadow in his eyes didn't fade. Something was off, but she pushed it down, focusing on the fire behind them, the ashes of the Hamiltons' lies. The car pulled away, gravel crunching under the tires, and Zora leaned her head back, the taste of blood and wine still sharp on her tongue. Under the moonlight, her dark skin gleamed, and for the first time in years, she felt the weight of the Hamiltons start to lift. But Morgan's trembling hand, that fleeting glance at his phone, they stuck with her, a quiet warning in the back of her mind. Holy shit, did you see that fire? If this drama's got your heart racing, smash that subscribe button to catch every twist of Zora's story. Drop a comment. How's Zora gonna make the Hamiltons pay? And where you at? Atlanta or beyond? Atlanta's midtown pulsed with energy, the skyline a jagged mix of glass towers and neon signs. The Georgia Tech Conference Center buzzed with tech bros in Patagonia vests and startup founders pitching dreams over overpriced coffee. The air smelled of Starbucks and ambition undercut by the faint tang of city sweat. Zora Brooks, 38, navigated the crowd with the precision of someone used to being overlooked. Her navy blazer hugged her curves, her natural curls pulled into a high bun, and her brown eyes scanned the room for her nonprofit's booth. She was here to pitch her platform, a data-driven tool to fund black and brown entrepreneurs. But the tech world wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for a black woman with a mission. Excuse me, can you grab me a latte? A white guy in a polo shirt called, barely glancing at her. Zora's jaw tightened, but she kept moving her heels, clicking on the polished floor. Third time today, she thought, brushing off the assumption she was staff. 20 years with the Hamiltons had taught her how to swallow that kind of bullshit and keep going. She reached her booth, a modest setup with flyers and a laptop displaying her platform's metrics. Keisha Monroe, her best friend and unofficial hype woman, was already there, her braids swinging as she handed out cards. Yo, Zora, you see these clowns? Keisha said, nodding at the crowd. Half these fools think diversity means adding a vegan option to the buffet. Zora laughed, the sound easing the knot in her chest. Let's just get through this, Keisha. We need one investor to bite. At 40, Keisha was a freelance journalist with a knack for calling out hypocrisy, and she'd been Zora's anchor since their days scraping by in Atlanta's West End. Her loud laugh and sharp tongue were a shield against the world's nonsense. Before Zora could reply, a commotion broke out near the coffee station. A tall figure in a tailored Armani suit bumped into a table, sending a tray of cups crashing to the floor. Shit. The guy swore, his voice carrying over the chatter. Morgan Hart, 28, straightened up his dark hair, falling into his green eyes, a cocky grin already forming. My bad, folks. Guess I'm too damn pretty to watch where I'm going. The crowd chuckled, charmed by his easy arrogance. Morgan was a walking cliché of new money, born into a real estate and tech dynasty. He'd never known a day of struggle. His quip landed like he knew it would, and he brushed coffee off his suit, unfazed. But when he turned, he collided with Zora, splashing latte across her blazer. "Motherfucker," Zora muttered, stepping back, her eyes narrowing. The stains spread, ruining her only good jacket. She glared at Morgan, who held up his hands, still grinning like it was a game. "Damn my fault," he said, his voice smooth. "But like this jacket's worth $1 million now." Spilled Coffee by Morgan Hart. "That's art." He winked, expecting a laugh. Zora didn't smile. "Great. I'll sell it to fund my nonprofit then. Thanks for the donation." Her tone was ice, and she grabbed a napkin, dabbing at the stain. Keisha snorted behind her, muttering, "This dude's full of shit." Morgan's grin faltered, but his eyes lit up like he'd just found something interesting. "Nonprofit, huh? What's the pitch? Lay it on me." He leaned against the booth, ignoring the line forming at the coffee station, his sandalwood cologne cutting through the coffee smell. Zora raised an eyebrow, sizing him up. Rich cocky, probably here to throw money at some crypto scam. But she needed funding, so she launched into her pitch, her voice steady and sharp. "My platform uses data to connect marginalized entrepreneurs with microgrants. Black, brown, queer, disabled people the banks ignore. We've already funded 50 businesses with a 90% repayment rate. I'm looking for investors who care about impact, not just headlines." Morgan listened. His head tilted, and for a moment, the smugness faded. "That's dope," he said almost to himself. "You're not just talking the talk, huh?" He pulled out a business card, handing it to her. "I run a venture fund. Let's talk." Zora took the card, her fingers brushing his, and a spark shot through her, unexpected and annoying. She shoved it in her pocket, keeping her face neutral. "We'll see," she said, turning back to her booth. Keisha elbowed her, whispering, "You shut his ass down, girl." But Morgan didn't leave. He lingered, asking questions about her platform, his usual swagger dialed back. When Keisha stepped away to grab waters, he leaned closer, his voice low. "You don't like me much, do you?" Zora met his gaze, unflinching. "I don't know you, man, but I know your type. Rich loud, think the world spins for you. Am I wrong?" He laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. "Half right. I'm loud as hell, and yeah, I'm loaded, but I'm not here to screw you over. I like what you're doing. It's real." His eyes held hers, and Zora felt that spark again, stronger now, stirring something she hadn't felt in years. She broke the moment, stepping back. "Talk's cheap. Show me you mean it." She turned to a new visitor at the booth, dismissing him. Morgan smirked, undeterred, and sauntered off, but not before tossing over his shoulder, "You'll see me again. Zora Brooks." A week later, Zora sat in her cramped office in the West End, the air thick with the smell of burnt coffee and printer ink. Her nonprofit was scraping by, and the conference hadn't landed the investor she'd hoped for. Keisha lounged on a folding chair, scrolling her phone. "You hear from that pretty boy yet?" she asked, smirking. "Nope," Zora said, her eyes on her laptop, probably just blowing smoke. But as she spoke, her phone buzzed with an email from Morgan Hart's venture fund, proposing a meeting to discuss a $100,000 investment. Her heart skipped, but she kept her cool, forwarding it to Keisha. "Damn girl," Keisha crowed. "He's serious, or he's trying to get in your pants." "Shut up." Zora laughed, but her mind raced. Morgan was a risk too young, too cocky, too white, too everything. But $100,000 could change lives. She agreed to meet him at a co-working space in Midtown, a sleek spot with exposed brick and overpriced smoothies. Morgan showed up late, his suit swapped for a hoodie and jeans, his hair still falling in his eyes. "Yo, sorry," he said, sliding into a chair. "Traffic's a bitch." He flashed that grin, but Zora wasn't here for charm. She laid out her terms. Equity stakes for her clients, no strings attached. Morgan listened, jotting notes, and surprised her with sharp questions about scalability and data privacy. "You're not just a trust fund baby, huh?" she said, half teasing as they wrapped up. He leaned back, smirking. "Oh, I'm that too. But I'm not dumb. Your shit's legit, Zora. I'm in." He paused, his voice softening. "And, I meant what I said at the conference. You're real. I don't meet a lot of people like that." Zora's chest tightened, but she brushed it off. "Don't get soft on me, Hart. Sign the papers first." He laughed, and they shook hands, his grip lingering a second too long. Their partnership grew over weeks, meetings turning into late-night strategy sessions at Zora's office. Morgan's cockiness grated, but his ideas were solid, and he pushed her to think bigger. One night, as rain pattered against the windows, they got stuck on a grant proposal, the room lit by a single desk lamp. Morgan sprawled on a couch, butchered a reference to John Coltrane, calling him Coltrane. Zora burst out laughing, the sound echoing in the quiet. "Man, what planet you from? It's Coltrane, you heathen." Morgan clutched his chest, mock-wounded. "Damn, cut me some slack, I'm trying here." He grinned, then pulled out his phone, queuing up a Love Supreme. The saxophone filled the room, and they sat in silence, the music weaving a thread between them. Zora's guard slipped just a fraction. "You ever feel like you're faking it?" Morgan asked suddenly, his voice low. "Like everyone's waiting for you to prove you're not just money." Zora looked at him, surprised. "Every damn day," she admitted. "The Hamiltons made sure I knew I wasn't enough. Still do." She hadn't meant to say it, but the words spilled out raw and heavy. Morgan leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Fuck 'em. You're more real than any of those assholes." He reached for her hand, then stopped, like he wasn't sure he'd earned it. Zora's heart thudded, but she pulled back, standing to break the spell. "Get some sleep, Hart," she said, her voice shaky. "We got work tomorrow." The next week, they landed their first joint project, a $50,000 grant for a black-owned bakery in the West End. To celebrate, Morgan dragged Zora to a rooftop bar in Virginia Highlands, the city's lights sprawling below. The air smelled of grilled meat and weed, and a DJ spun R&B, the bass vibrating through the crowd. Morgan ordered bourbon, his grin loose and easy. To us, he toasted, clinking her glass. Us. Zora raised an eyebrow, sipping her drink. "Slow down, pretty boy." He laughed, leaning closer. "Come on, Zora. You know I'm into you. What's it gonna take to get a smile out of you?" She smirked, but her stomach flipped. He was too young, too rich, too white, too dangerous. But his eyes, bright and unguarded, made her want to believe he meant it. They talked for hours, the bourbon loosening their tongues. He told her about his dad's law firm, how it cleaned up messes for Atlanta's elite. His voice tinged with bitterness. "Old man thinks I'm a screw-up," he said, shrugging. "Maybe he's right." Zora's guard softened. "You're not a screw-up, Morgan. You're just loud." They both laughed, and when he walked her to her car, the humid night wrapping around them, he stopped short of her door. "I meant it," he said, his voice low. "You're different, Zora. I want to know you. For real." She looked up at him, the city's glow catching in his eyes, and felt that spark again, hot, reckless, alive. "We'll see," she said, climbing into her car, her heart racing as she drove away. Atlanta's Virginia Highlands hummed with late summer energy, the streets lined with trendy bars and boutiques, the air thick with grilled burgers, and the faint skunk of weed. Zora Brooks, 38, stood outside a rooftop lounge, her black dress hugging her curves, her natural curls catching the neon glow of a sign advertising craft cocktails. She adjusted her locket, a nervous habit, and checked her phone. Morgan Hart was late again. 2 months into their partnership, and his punctuality was as reliable as a busted MARTA train. "Yo, he's got you waiting like a damn Uber driver," Keisha Monroe teased, leaning against a railing, her braids swaying as she sipped a mojito. At 40, Keisha's sharp tongue and sharper instincts made her Zora's unofficial bullshit detector. "You sure this rich boy's worth it?" Zora smirked, but her stomach twisted. "He's funding half my grants, Keisha. I'll deal with his flaky ass for that." But it wasn't just the money. Morgan's cocky grin, his unexpected vulnerability during their late-night talks, they'd wormed their way under her skin. At 28, he was too young, too white, too everything, but when he looked at her like she was the only person in the room, she felt something she hadn't in years. Hope. And that scared the hell out of her. Her phone buzzed a text from Morgan. "Traffic's a bitch. Be there in 5. Order me a bourbon." She rolled her eyes, showing Keisha, who snorted. "This dude's got some nerve. You better charge him interest." Before Zora could reply, a sleek Porsche pulled up, and Morgan Hart hopped out his hoodie, swapped for a tailored blazer. His dark hair mussed, like he'd run a hand through it too many times. His green eyes lit up when he saw her, and he jogged over, ignoring the valet's glare. "Damn, Zora, you look good enough to start a riot," he said, his grin wide and unapologetic. "Flattery won't make you less late," she shot back, but her lips twitched. He smelled of sandalwood and bourbon, and when he leaned in to hug her, her pulse kicked up, betraying her cool. Keisha cleared her throat, smirking. "Aight, lovebirds. I'm out. Don't do nothing stupid without me." She sauntered off, leaving Zora shaking her head. Inside the lounge was packed the vibe, all exposed brick and overpriced drinks. R&B thumped from speakers, and the crowd a mix of tech bros, influencers, and old money mingled under string lights. Zora and Morgan grabbed a high-top table, their knees brushing as they settled in. He ordered a round of bourbons, his arm slung over the back of her chair, casual but possessive. So he said, his voice low, "We landed that bakery grant. You're killing it, Brooks." "We're killing it," she corrected, sipping her drink, the burn warming her chest. "You pushed for the extra funding. I'll give you that." He grinned, leaning closer. "See, I'm not just a pretty face." His fingers grazed her hand, and Zora's breath hitched. She pulled back her guard, snapping up. This was dangerous, too fast, too messy. He was a decade younger, a walking red flag with a trust fund. But his eyes, bright and unguarded, made her want to jump anyway. Their moment shattered when a voice cut through the music. Morgan. "Oh my God, is that you, Chloe Randall?" 28 glided over her gold dress, shimmering, her blonde hair cascading, like she'd stepped out of an Instagram filter. She was an influencer with a knack for trouble, and her smile was all teeth as she threw her arms around Morgan, her body pressing against his. "It's been forever, babe." Zora's jaw tightened, her fingers curling around her glass. Morgan laughed, easing Chloe back, but not fast enough. "Yo, Chloe, chill. I'm here with Zora." He gestured to her, his grin faltering when he saw her expression. Chloe's eyes flicked to Zora, her smile turning sharp. "Oh, right, the nonprofit lady. Cute dress." The compliment dripped with condescension, and Zora felt the familiar sting of being sized up, dismissed. She'd dealt with women like Chloe her whole life, pretty privileged and petty as hell. "Thanks," Zora said, her voice cool. "Nice. Sparkles." She nodded at Chloe's dress, her tone just shy of a jab. Morgan snorted, covering it with a cough. Chloe ignored her, looping her arm through Morgan's. "You didn't tell me you were slumming it in the non-profit world." She purred, her hand lingering on his chest. "I thought you were all about big deals, not charity cases." Zora's grip on her glass tightened, but before she could fire back, Morgan stepped out of Chloe's reach, his jaw tight. Zora's work is bigger than any deal I've done, he said, his voice firm. You should check it out sometime. Might learn something. Chloe's smile didn't waver, but her eyes flashed. Sure, babe. Call me when you're free. She sauntered off, her hips swaying, leaving a cloud of perfume and tension. Zora exhaled, her heart pounding. Friend of yours? She asked, her tone clipped. Morgan rubbed his neck, sheepish. More like a bad habit. We went to college together. She's a lot. He reached for her hand, but Zora pulled away, standing. I need some air, she said, heading for the rooftop's edge, the city's lights blurring below. Morgan followed his steps, hesitant. Zora, come on, don't let her get to you, he said, stopping beside her. She's just jealous. It's not about her. Zora snapped, turning to face him. It's about this. She gestured between them. You're 28, Morgan. You're a damn millionaire running with girls like that. What the hell are you doing with me? I'm not your type, and we both know it. His face fell, and for once the cockiness was gone. You think I'm playing you? He asked, his voice low. Zora, I'm here because I want to be. You're smart. You're real. You're everything I'm not. Age don't mean shit to me. She wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. You say that now, she said, her voice softer. But what happens when you get bored? I've been burned before, Morgan. I can't do it again. He stepped closer, his hand hovering near her arm. I'm not going anywhere, he said, his eyes locked on hers. Give me a chance to prove it. Zora's chest ached, but she nodded barely. We'll see, she said, turning back to the city, her heart a tangle of hope and fear. The next day, Zora's office was a mess of grant applications and coffee cups. Keisha barged in, her phone in hand, her eyes wide. Girl, you seen this? She shoved the screen at Zora, showing a gossip blog post. Millionaire Morgan Hart. Cozies up with mystery woman at rooftop bar. The grainy photo captured Chloe hugging Morgan Zora, barely visible in the background. The caption read, Is Hart trading high society for a charity fling, motherfucker? Zora muttered, her stomach dropping. This is Chloe's doing. Keisha nodded, furious. That chick's out here spreading lies. She's telling everyone you're after Morgan's money. I heard it from a friend at the Journal-Constitution. Zora's hands shook, but she forced herself to stay calm. She dealt with worse, from the Hamiltons' whispers, sneers, lies about her worth. But this hit different. Morgan wasn't just a partner. He was something more, and the thought of losing that stung. Her phone buzzed with a call from Evelyn Hamilton, her adoptive mother. Zora hesitated, then answered, bracing herself. What do you want? Evelyn. Evelyn's voice was syrupy, venomous. I saw the little article, Zora. Really a boy like that? You think a white millionaire's going to marry you? He's playing you, dear. Stick to your projects. Fuck you, Zora said, her voice low. You don't get to talk about my life. She hung up, her heart pounding. But Evelyn's words echoed her own fears. Was Morgan too good to be true? That evening, Zora met Marcus Tate at a coffee shop in the West End, needing a friend who didn't come with complications. Marcus, 35, sat across from her, his button-up crisp, his dimples softening his serious face. He'd been her rock at the non-profit, always ready with a legal fix or a bad joke. You okay? He asked, sliding her a latte. Not really, Zora admitted, stirring her drink. This thing with Morgan, it's a mess. And now the Hamiltons are in my head, plus some influencer chick stirring shit. Marcus leaned forward, his voice gentle. You don't need that drama, Zora. You're too good for it. He paused, then reached into his bag, pulling out a small bouquet of sunflowers. I got these for you. Thought they'd cheer you up." His hand fumbled, and the flowers slipped, landing in a puddle of spilled coffee on the table. Zora laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "Marcus, you're a damn mess," she said, helping him mop up. But his eyes were earnest, and he took a breath, his voice low. "I'm not good at this, but I care about you, Zora. More than I probably should. I'm not a millionaire, but I'd never hurt you. Not like him." Zora's smile faded, her heart sinking. Marcus was safe, steady, someone who shared her world. But when she looked at him, she didn't feel that spark, that reckless heat she felt with Morgan. "Marcus, you're amazing," she said softly. "But I need time." He nodded, his jaw tight, but he forced a smile. "I get it. Just be careful, okay?" That night, Zora found Morgan at his midtown loft, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Atlanta skyline. He opened the door, his t-shirt rumpled, his eyes tired. "Yo, you good?" he asked, stepping aside to let her in. "No," she said, tossing her phone on his couch, the gossip post still open. "Your friend Chloe's out here calling me a gold digger. The Hamiltons are laughing their asses off, and I'm wondering if I'm a damn fool for trusting you." Morgan's face darkened, his hands clenching. "Chloe's full of shit, Zora. I told her to back off. And the Hamiltons, fuck 'em. They don't know you." "But do you?" she shot back, her voice rising. "You're 28, Morgan. You run with girls like Chloe, live in places like this." She gestured at the loft, its marble counters and art prints screaming wealth. "What are we doing? Am I just some fling to you?" He stepped closer, his voice raw. "You think I'm playing, Zora? I'm in this. I don't give a damn about your age or what anyone says. You're the realest thing I've got." His hand reached for hers, but she stepped back, her eyes burning. "Then why does it feel like I'm setting myself up to crash?" she said, her voice breaking. "I can't do this if it's not real, Morgan." He opened his mouth, but no words came. Zora grabbed her phone and left the elevator's ding echoing as she descended, her heart a knot of anger and longing. Outside, Atlanta's lights glittered, but they offered no answers. The Chattahoochee River shimmered under Atlanta's dusk, its surface catching the last of the September light. Zora Brooks, 38, walked along the riverfront trail, her sneakers crunching on gravel, her natural curls bouncing free in the humid breeze. The air smelled of wet earth and grilled hot dogs from a nearby food truck, and the distant hum of traffic blended with the river's soft rush. Morgan Hart, 28, kept pace beside her, his hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets, his dark hair falling into his green eyes. They'd been dodging each other for days, the sting of their last fight, Zora's doubts, Morgan's defensiveness still raw. "Yo, you gonna talk or just glare at the water all night?" Morgan asked, his voice half teasing, half nervous. He'd been quieter since their blow-up at his loft, his usual cockiness muted. The gossip post calling Zora a gold digger, Chloe Randall's venom, and the Hamiltons' cruelty had driven a wedge between them, and Zora's silence wasn't helping. She stopped turning to face him, her brown eyes sharp but tired. "I don't know what to say, Morgan. You say you're in, but then I see that damn article, hear Evelyn's voice in my head, and I'm wondering if I'm the idiot here." Her fingers brushed the locket at her neck, a reflex when she felt cornered. "You're a decade younger, running with influencers and elites. I'm just me." Morgan's jaw tightened and he stepped closer, his sandalwood cologne cutting through the river's earthy scent. "Zora, you're not just anything. You're the realest damn person I know. I don't give a fuck about Chloe or the Hamiltons or what some blog says. I'm here for you." His voice cracked, and for once the trust fund bravado was gone, replaced by something raw, almost desperate. Zora's chest ached, her resolve wavering. She wanted to believe him, but her world had taught her, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Still, his eyes held hers, steady and warm, and she felt that spark again, the one that made her want to leap. "You're too damn charming for your own good," she said, her voice soft, a half-smile breaking through. He grinned, stepping closer until their shoes nearly touched. "Is that a yes to giving me a shot?" His hand reached for hers, tentative, and this time she didn't pull away. His fingers were warm, calloused, despite his privileged life, and Zora's breath hitched. "Not a yes," she said, her voice low, "but not a no." She squeezed his hand, her heart pounding, and they stood there, the river flowing behind them, the city's lights flickering on. Morgan leaned in his lips, brushing her forehead, a gesture so tender it caught her off guard. She closed her eyes, letting herself feel it, just for a moment. "I'm not perfect, Zora," he murmured, his breath warm against her skin. "But I'm trying. I'm scared I ain't enough for you, but I'm trying." She pulled back, looking up at him, her smile wry. "You're enough of a mess, that's for sure." They laughed, the sound easing the tension, and walked on, hands still linked the river's murmur, a quiet promise of something possible. The next day, Zora's office in the West End was a chaos of papers and ringing phones. Her nonprofit was scaling up thanks to Morgan's funding, but the pressure was relentless. Keisha Monroe burst in her braids, tied back her eyes wide with alarm. "Girl, you seen this?" She thrust her phone at Zora, displaying a new gossip article from an Atlanta tabloid. Harthair's charity romance. Love or leverage? The photo showed Morgan and Chloe at the rooftop bar, her arms around him with a blurry shot of Zora in the background captioned, "Is Zora Brooks after Morgan Hart's millions?" "Motherfucker!" Zora hissed, her hands shaking. "This shit again." The article quoted an anonymous source claiming Zora was using Morgan to climb the social ladder with digs about her troubled past with the Hamiltons. It was Chloe's handiwork, no doubt, but the betrayal cut deeper. Someone close had fed the details. Keisha paced, furious. "This is some next-level bullshit. Chloe's out here playing dirty, and I bet the Hamiltons are egging her on. You gotta shut this down, Zora." "I'm trying," Zora said, her voice tight. She'd spent years proving herself to a world that saw her as less worthy, less capable, less human. Now, with Morgan, it was happening again, and the weight was crushing. Her phone buzzed with a text from Morgan. Saw the article. "I'm handling it. Meet me at the Peachtree Gala tonight. Trust me." Zora's gut churned. Another gala, another chance for the elite to tear her apart. But Morgan's words, "trust me," echoed, and she nodded more to herself than Keisha. "Fine, I'll go." The Peachtree Center's ballroom glittered with wealth, its chandeliers casting light on Atlanta's power players. Zora walked in her red dress, bold against her dark skin, her curls a defiant crown. The air smelled of champagne and ambition, and R&B played softly, undercut by the clink of glasses. Morgan stood near the bar, his blazer sharp, his eyes scanning the room until they found her. He crossed the crowd, ignoring the stares, and pulled her into a quick hug. "You look like trouble," he said, grinning. "Always," she replied, but her smile was tight. Chloe Randall was already there, her gold gown shimmering. Her smile venomous as she chatted with a group of investors. Evelyn and Sophia Hamilton sat at a prime table, their diamonds winking their eyes cold as they watched Zora. The room felt like a minefield. The gala's host, a slick tech CEO, took the stage droning about community impact. Morgan leaned close, whispering, "This guy's full of shit. Wanna ditch and get wings." Zora laughed, the sound easing her nerves, but the mood shifted when Chloe sauntered over, her perfume cloying. "Morgan, darling, you didn't tell me you were bringing—" "Her," Chloe said, her voice dripping with fake surprise. "Zora, right, I read about you. Quite the story." Her smile was a blade, and the investors nearby turned their curiosity sharp. Zora's fists clenched, but before she could respond, Morgan stepped forward, his voice loud enough to carry. "Yeah, Chloe, let's talk about stories. Like how you fed that trash article to the tabloids trying to smear Zora. You think I wouldn't find out?" The room went quiet, heads turning, phones subtly raised. Chloe's face paled, but she laughed, tossing her hair. "Oh, Morgan, don't be dramatic. I was just sharing concerns. She's not exactly your level, is she?" Morgan's eyes blazed and he faced the crowd, his voice booming. "Zora Brooks is 10 times the person any of y'all will ever be. She's built a nonprofit that's changing lives while you sip champagne and talk shit. I'm proud to work with her, to know her, and yeah, to love her. So fuck your gossip, fuck your lies, and fuck anyone who thinks she's less than a queen." The room erupted, some gasps, some applause, a few murmurs of disapproval. Zora's heart stopped, her eyes wide as Morgan turned to her. His grin, shaky, but real, meant every word he said softer, now taking her hand. Chloe stormed off her heels, clicking, and the Hamiltons sat frozen, their faces sour. Zora's throat tightened, her emotions a tangle of awe and fear. Morgan had just put himself on the line for her in front of Atlanta's elite. But the weight of the room's stares, the article's venom, and Evelyn's voice in her head, "He's playing you," pressed down hard. She squeezed his hand, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." Later, outside the ballroom, Zora stood under the Peachtree Center's awning, the night air cool against her skin. Morgan joined her, his blazer off his shirt sleeves rolled up. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. She nodded, but her eyes were distant. "You didn't have to do that, Morgan. Call out Chloe, make a scene. You're gonna catch hell for it. Let 'em come," he said, shrugging. "You're worth it." He stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek, and for a moment she leaned into it, the warmth grounding her. But the article, the Hamiltons, the whispers, they were too loud. "I need to talk to someone," she said, pulling away. "Clear my head." He nodded, his jaw tight. "I'm here when you're ready." Zora drove to Rosa Delgado's small house in Decatur, the streets quiet, the air smelling of pine and asphalt. Rosa 55 welcomed her with a hug, her Puerto Rican accent thick as she brewed coffee. "Mi niña, you look lost," she said, setting a mug on the kitchen table, its surface scarred from years of family meals. Zora clutched the mug, her voice low. "Morgan stood up for me tonight, Rosa. Said he loves me. But the world's screaming. I don't belong with him. The Hamiltons. Chloe. The damn tabloids, they're in my head." Rosa's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "The Hamiltons tried to break you, Zora. They hated your mama's spirit, called her trouble because she wouldn't bow. You're her daughter, stronger than they know. But this boy—" She paused, sipping her coffee. "He fights for you, but love ain't enough if the world keeps tearing you down. You gotta choose you first." Zora's eyes burned, Rosa's words cutting through her fog. She thought of her mother's letter, the warning about trust, and Morgan's family firm, mentioned in passing. Doubt crept in sharper now. "What if he's not who I think?" she whispered. Rosa squeezed her hand. "Then you walk away. You're enough, Nina. Always were." The next morning, Zora sat in her office, the gossip article still open on her laptop. Her phone buzzed with messages from Morgan, but she couldn't answer. The tabloids' lies, Evelyn's venom, Chloe's games. They were a storm she couldn't outrun. And deep down, she feared Morgan's world would swallow her just like the Hamiltons had. She booked a flight to Savannah, needing space to think. Before leaving, she texted Morgan, "I need time. I'm sorry." She drove to the airport, the Atlanta skyline fading in her rear view, her locket heavy against her chest. As the plane took off, She whispered her mother's folk song, the notes a lifeline, but her heart was a battlefield loved out, and the weight of a world that refused to let her be. The Hamilton estate in Buckhead didn't look like a prison anymore. The white columns still loomed. The hedges still stood trimmed to perfection, but the air felt different, lighter, like a storm had passed. Zora Brooks, now 38, and finally free, had turned the mansion into the headquarters for her nonprofit, a place where marginalized entrepreneurs could find a foothold. The chandeliers were gone, replaced by open workspaces buzzing with purpose. The hardwood floors, once polished for gala guests, now bore scuff marks from volunteers hauling in desks and dreams. Tonight, the backyard glowed under string lights, a far cry from the champagne-soaked gala 3 months ago. A small crowd, friends not elites, gathered around folding tables piled with Rosa Delgado's cornbread, Keisha Monroe's fried chicken, and a cooler of sweet tea. The smell of butter and grease mixed with the warm July breeze, and a Bluetooth speaker pumped Outkast's Atlians, the bass thumping through the humid air. Zora stood by the grill, her natural curls loose and gleaming, her body relaxed in a white tank top and jeans. For the first time in years, her smile reached her eyes. "Yo, Zora, you gonna eat or just stand there looking pretty?" Keisha called, her braids swinging as she waved a drumstick. At 40, Keisha was a freelance journalist with a mouth sharper than a switchblade, and she'd been Zora's rock through the Hamilton years. Her brown eyes sparkled with mischief as she nudged Marcus Tate, who was nursing a beer. "Tell her, Marcus, she's too damn skinny." Marcus, 35, a lawyer who worked with Zora's nonprofit, chuckled, his dimples flashing. "She's fine, Keisha. Let the woman breathe." His voice was warm, but his gaze lingered on Zora a beat too long, carrying the weight of his unspoken feelings. He'd been her steady ally, always there with a quiet joke or a legal workaround, but he'd never crossed the line, not after she chose Morgan. Morgan Hart, 28, leaned against a table, a beer in hand, his dark hair falling into his green eyes. He wore a faded t-shirt and jeans, a far cry from the torn suit he'd stormed the gala in. The bruise on his cheek was long gone, but the intensity in his stare hadn't faded. He caught Zora's eye and grinned, raising his bottle. "To my wife, the baddest woman in Atlanta." Zora rolled her eyes, but her lips curved. "Shut up, you corny ass." She crossed the yard, the grass soft under her sneakers, and leaned into him, his arm slipping around her waist, his sandalwood cologne mixed with the smoky grill grounding her. For a moment, she let herself sink into it, the laughter, the music, the warmth of people who saw her, not the Hamiltons' prop. Rosa Delgado, 55, bustled over with a tray of cornbread, her Puerto Rican accent thick as she scolded Morgan. "Mijo, you eat nothing. Look at you, skinny like a stick." Rosa, the former Hamilton housekeeper, had been Zora's only kindness in that house, singing her lullabies and sneaking her extra dessert. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled into a bun, and her eyes crinkled as she hugged Zora. "You look happy, mi niña. Your mama would be proud." Zora's throat tightened. Her mother, a singer who died when Zora was 5, was a ghost she'd been chasing through music. "Thanks, Rosa," she said softly, her fingers brushing the locket at her neck, a relic from her mom. Morgan squeezed her waist, his touch steady, but she caught a flicker in his eyes, something off like a shadow passing through. "Yo, Morgan, you still singing like a strangled cat," Keisha teased, tossing a napkin at him. "Zora, how you deal with this fool?" Morgan laughed, his voice easy. "Man, I'm a damn superstar." "Right, baby." He winked at Zora, but his hand tightened on his beer and she felt that shadow again, nagging at her gut. The night wore on, the sky turning indigo cicadas humming in the trees. Zora slipped inside to grab more ice, her sneakers squeaking on the now unpolished floors. In her old room now, an office, she paused, spotting a dusty box of keepsakes under the desk. She knelt, pulling out a notebook, its pages yellowed. Flipping it open, she found her teenage handwriting. Learn Mama's songs. Be free. Her chest ached, but a folded letter slipped out, one she'd never seen. Her mother's script faded but clear. I trusted him, Zora. The man with the promises. He said he'd help us, but he left. Be careful who you trust. Zora's breath caught. Who was he? Her mother had been a single mom scraping by in Atlanta's West End. No one had ever mentioned a man. The words churned in her mind, and that shadow from Morgan's eyes crept back louder now. She tucked the letter away, her hands unsteady, and returned to the party, forcing a smile. Later, as the guests trickled out, Rosa pulled Zora aside, her voice low. Your mama, she was a star, Nina. The Hamiltons hated her spirit, called her trouble. But she loved you fierce. Don't let this house steal that from you. Rosa's eyes flicked to Morgan, who was helping Marcus stack chairs. He's good to you, but watch him. Men like that, they carry secrets. Zora nodded, her stomach twisting. I know, Rosa. I'm good. But she wasn't sure. The next morning, a letter arrived, its ivory envelope crisp against the nonprofit's cluttered desk. Zora's name was scrawled on it, Zara Brooks, a deliberate misspelling. It was an invitation to Sophia Hamilton's wedding, a lavish affair meant to polish the family's tarnished name after the gala disaster. Zora's laugh was bitter. They can't even spell my damn name, she muttered, tossing it to Morgan. He scanned it, his jaw tight. Fuck 'em. You don't owe them shit. But his eyes darted away, and Zora's unease grew. She'd planned to ignore the invite, maybe send a petty note, but Rosa's words and that letter from her mother lit a fire in her. She wasn't done with the Hamiltons. Not yet. 3 days later, Atlanta's Fox Theater buzzed with the city's elite, gathered for a charity gala, where the Hamiltons were set to reclaim their spotlight. Zora walked in unannounced, a black dress hugging her curves, her curls a crown under the stage lights. The crowd parted, whispers trailing her like smoke. William Hamilton stood on stage mid-speech about community, his silver hair gleaming. Evelyn and Sophia sat in the front row, their smiles plastic. Chloe Randall in a gold gown smirked from a nearby table. Zora didn't wait for an invitation. She climbed the stage, her heels clicking, and snatched the microphone from William's hand. Y'all want to talk about community? She said, her voice steady, cutting through the stunned silence. Let's talk about the Hamiltons. They adopted me to cover up William's racist ass getting sued 20 years ago. They trussed me up at their gala, poured wine on my head, called me trash. But guess who saved their sorry mansion from foreclosure? Me. I negotiated with the bank, kept their lights on while they spat in my face. The crowd gasped, phones raised to record. William's face turned purple. You're lying, you little, he started. But Zora cut him off, nodding to Keisha in the tech booth. A screen lit up, playing the video Keisha had secretly recorded at the gala, William dumping wine, sneering, "She's still trash." The crowd erupted, some shouting, others clapping. Evelyn clutched her purse, her diamonds shaking. Sophia hid her face and Chloe bolted for the exit, only to be swarmed by reporters. Zora locked eyes with William. I saved your house, but you called me nothing. Fuck you, Hamiltons. I'm Zora Brooks, and I don't need your name anymore. She dropped the mic, the thud echoing, and walked off stage, the crowd roaring behind her. Morgan stood at the foot of the stairs, his grin wide. That's my wife, you assholes, he shouted, pulling her into a hug. You kicked their asses, baby. But the high didn't last. Back at the mansion, Zora's unease returned sharper now. She slipped into her office, the letter from her mother burning a hole in her mind. Rummaging through Morgan's desk for a pen, she found a locked box, its key taped underneath. Her hands shook as she opened it, revealing a file labeled Hamilton Case, 2005. Inside were legal documents tying Morgan's family law firm to William's lawsuit, the same one the Hamiltons adopted her to bury. A note in Morgan's handwriting read, "Check connection to Zora's mother. Don't tell her yet." Her heart stopped. She stormed downstairs, the file clutched in her hand, and found Morgan in the kitchen sipping a beer. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, slamming the file on the counter. "You knew about the lawsuit. About my mom. Who the fuck was she to your family?" Morgan's face went pale, his beer clattering to the floor. "Zora, I swear I was gonna tell you. I found this shit a month ago, but I didn't know how to bullshit." Zora shouted, her voice breaking. "You knew my mom was tied to this and you hid it. I trusted you, Morgan. I thought you were different." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. The man who'd burned a post for her, who'd called her his world, had kept a secret that cut to her core. "Zora, please, Morgan," begged, stepping toward her, his hands raised. "I was protecting you. I think my dad's firm screwed your mom over, but I'm not sure how. I didn't want to hurt you till I knew the truth." "Fuck you, Morgan," she spat, backing away. "I'm done with lies." She grabbed her jacket and walked out the Atlanta night, swallowing her. Rain poured, soaking her curls, her dress clinging to her skin. She didn't look back even as Morgan called her name, his voice raw and desperate. Zora stopped on the Peachtree Street Bridge, the city's lights blurring in the rain. Her locket hung heavy at her neck, and she whispered a folk song her mother used to sing, the notes trembling in the downpour. Behind her, Morgan watched from his car, his phone glowing with a new message. "We need to talk about the Brooks case. Urgent." He gripped the wheel, his knuckles white, but didn't move. Zora stood alone, her dark skin glistening under the streetlights, her eyes fierce but fractured. But she'd won her freedom. But at what cost? The truth about her mother, about Morgan, hung like a storm cloud, unanswered, unresolved. Holy hell, did that twist hit you like a truck? Will Zora forgive Morgan, or is this the end? Smash that subscribe button to catch more stories that'll leave you shook. Drop a comment. What's Morgan hiding? And where you at? Atlanta or beyond?